I'm sick right now, dude. As some of you may know, I'm working on a game. This is sort of an update video, but mostly just a more coherent explanation of the concept. The last video was successful, I found a scripter, but it was also kind of a mess. Normally I post updates like this in the community tab, but I wanted to reach a wider audience with this one since I'm trying to hire a builder. I'll get into that later, but if you're curious, the DevForum ad will be posted below. There is compensation. Here's a quick recap of the concept for my game, just in case you missed that video. Sector Wars is a shooter game mostly inspired by older Roblox games that I used to play, but with a twist. I don't think I have much footage of these games, and everyone was different, but basically, people would take free model guns, some Roblox gear, and jam them together. This resulted in an interesting style of gameplay that I think is unique to the platform. A good spiritual successor to this type of game would be Item Asylum or Neighborhood War. But in my game, I want to keep things more grounded. The main mechanic, which I think will make my game unique, is time progression. The time progression concept is inspired by an old game called Ages of Robloxia. This was a simple team deathmatch game like what I described beforehand, but whenever you scored points, they were put towards evolving your team. The game would start in the Stone Age, and eventually players would progress to sci-fi level tech. In my game, time progression will function a bit differently. Every time an objective is captured, both teams will progress slightly at the same rate. All weapons in the game, besides the linked sword, are going to be based on weapons that existed or could have existed between the years 1860 and 1960. You'll go through the end of the Black Powder era, through the World Wars, and eventually to the early Cold War. Some of you may be familiar with the Red Orchestra / Rising Storm campaign game mode. This is going to be somewhat how the map progression will work in Sector Wars. The main difference is that instead of it being a series of separate maps, it's one continuous map which is loaded in parts. The map is also going to be rectangular instead of being square to make it directional, but I'm designing the layouts in a way which gives the player multiple routes of attack, so hopefully it won't be like slamming your face into a wall. The mechanics for attack and defense are still conceptual at this point, but the idea would be that the attacking team needs to capture supplies in order to continue the offensive, while the defending team needs to wait as long as possible before destroying them. If the defenders destroy their supplies too early, they risk running out of ammo. If they do it too late, they risk capture. These supplies would be small crates distributed around the defenders' positions, so it's not an all or nothing type deal. But the ammo situation isn't the primary objective, it's just a secondary one. For every map, there's still going to be a regular objective, like a cap zone, and these are what actually progress the game forward. Again, a lot of this stuff is conceptual. Another core mechanic of the game is its randomness. Although most of the time there's going to be a standard issue weapon of the era, there's always a chance to get something different. For example, a lever gun instead of a rifled musket, or a grenade launcher instead of an assault rifle. This also applies to the utility and throwable slots. You may get a trowel instead of a medkit, or a smoke grenade instead of a frag grenade. These small differences can completely change how you play each life, and I'm hoping it keeps the game continually interesting. But if you don't like what you spawn with, there are always ways that you can work around it. An inventory system is planned so you can loot bodies. Although I'm putting a big emphasis on matching the weapons to the time periods, the combat itself isn't going to be realistic. There will be some elements of realism, like headshots being insta-kills and suppression, but the game will be somewhat arcadey with the inclusion of sword jumping and a few Roblox gear. One thing I mentioned in the previous video was the asymmetric aspect of the team armories. In most games, even sometimes in historical ones, you tend to see essentially the same weapons being given to both teams. There isn't a capability or unique trait assigned to either one. Everything is equivalent to something else. I think that's boring, so I have a planned list of weapons for both teams that don't do this. Just to give an example, okay, so the teams are named Glorp and Skrunk. I came up with the names in a sleep-deprived state back in January, and they're too iconic to switch out now. The Glorps will start out mainly using muzzle loaders, but some lever guns and breech loaders will be mixed in. This team also has, rarely, some scoped rifles. The other team, the Skrunks, will almost entirely be equipped with needle rifles. In case you don't know what those are, they're single-shot bolt actions. So while a muzzle loader is inferior to a needle rifle, the lever guns and breech loaders certainly aren't. This might sound a bit unfair, but from my personal experience, in FPS games where everything has the potential to one-tap you, everything is good. In Rising Storm 2, a game where almost everyone has an assault rifle, a regular unscoped Mosin Nagant still works just fine. So this is the main reason why I made a video. I want to work with someone on these maps in order to get a higher quality result than if I were just doing it by myself. I don't want to change the style too much. I like the simplistic, kinda old-fashioned look, but I want to lean into it a bit more and increase the quality. Think combat initiation, At Odds End, and some lesser-known games like Approaching Bearable and Retro Sandhills. The level of detail I'm going for wouldn't be as intricate as some of these games. Really, almost everything would be one stud or larger, so no finer detail. But what's important is getting the terrain right and consistency with the style, things I haven't done a great job of. For every map, I'll have a basic layout, which is flexible, some visual references, and a little description. Most of these maps are going to be rural areas and some simple fortifications. If you want a reference point for what I mean, here's the hill map that I made. Aside from the style, there is something important that I want to focus on, and I've already come up with references and descriptions for these maps in order to get that result. I want it to feel like you're going from one place to another as you go back and forth down the line of maps. So the current idea is for the center area to be kind of an older American city with brick buildings and things like that. But obviously, again, when I'm saying these things, they're going to be very simple. And as you go up one track, you're going to head to the mountains. So I have some references of places that I've been to. And again, we're not trying to go for realism here. Obviously, we're sticking to a very simplistic style, but I want to at least try to embody the feeling of being in that environment. For the trees that are on these maps, I did a stupid amount of tree research. There are specific trees that I want to at least try to get the look of. Again, I'm going to keep saying this. We're not going for realism here. So if they just kind of vaguely look like that tree while maintaining the, one stud classic style, that's basically what I'm asking for. The other side of the map is going to have more simple terrain. It's just going to be heading down and lower in elevation until it reaches a flat plain and then the ocean. I mentioned the time periods being a major mechanic of the game. I intentionally picked areas which would stay the same throughout the 100-year period. The only thing that would really have to change would be the roads and some props like cars. So obviously you can't have cars in 1860. We're gonna have, I guess, carriages without horses. Unless you feel up to making a horse, but that would kind of have some moral issues with the destruction system. I mean, someone could RPG a horse. I don't know if we're gonna do all that. Really, just 3 sets of props I feel like is good. One for early in the game, pre-turn of the century, one for 1900 to 1920 something, and one for 1930 to 1960. When I say 1960, I really mean the 50s. There isn't going to be a 60s decade. 1960 is the end point. If the game is popular and people are playing it enough, then that could be one way to expand the content of the game, but that's not what this video is about. So what's the timeline for all of this? I'm going to say 2 months, but depending on how the rest of development goes, it may be flexible. So if you think you're qualified and you're up for this, go ahead and read the DevForum post. I don't think I didn't mention anything here, which I say there, but just in case. And when you send me an application, make sure to show any work that you've done, and I'm hoping that I will be able to hire someone relatively soon.